Hi everyone, I am Tanya Janca. I am your host for this We Hack Purple stream, and today we are co-hosting with Solvo.Cloud, and my guest is Shira Shamban. Welcome.
Thank you, Tanya.
Yes.
It's great to be here with you, even though, I miss you in person. This is almost as good as.
Yes. Will you tell everyone a little bit about yourself? So everyone already knows me because I am part of this community. Could you tell us about you?
Of course. So I started Solvo about 3 years ago with my co-founder, David, who is the CTO of the company. Prior to that, both of us worked for a company called Dome9 Security. And for me, that was the first time that I ever touched cloud infrastructure. Before that, I was a military officer doing completely other things. But I got this opportunity to join Dome9, and I decided this is a great time to learn about a technology that was new for me. So this is something we could talk about later, about how to get started with something you have zero experience with. But I just opened an AWS console, started playing around, and ended up building an intrusion detection product. During that time, I also got to meet Tanya at different international security conferences, to which both of us came as speakers. And I got to learn a lot about cloud security, and I got to educate other people about cloud security. Basically, at some point, I realized there was a big gap, and we can't keep on trying to train everyone about cloud security, because this is a very dynamic and evolving technology. So David and I figured we should build a product that is going to automate some of the things people are trying to do manually, but very often mess up. So this is the story about how we decided to build a security product that automates remediations for cloud applications. And this brings us to today, when you and I are going to talk about application security, cloud security, and why are they so connected to each other?
Yes, and we decided to name this Guardians of the Cloud, which I thought was like super fun. And with that, I want to quickly do the We Hack Purple contest. So We Hack Purple is sponsoring the Diana Initiative, which is an amazing conference held August 7th in Vegas. And the entire purpose is to help a lot more women get into information security. And if you want to win the contest and win a free ticket to go in person to the Diana Initiative and have coffee with me in person on me, that's right, frou coffees for everyone that wins, you need to email Amanda@wehackpurple.com with the super secret code word superhero. Again, Amanda@wehackpurple.com, superhero. And you need to email her as fast as possible, because whoever does it first, actually, I think April 25th, she's going to take all the people and do a random thing. But so do it right away when you see this so that you can get in.
Tanya, can you repeat the email address one more time, please?
Okay, so it's Amanda, AMAND, @wehackpurple.com. Superhero.
I just put it on the chat.
Oh, thank you.
No excuses.
That's smart.
Copy, paste it, and send an email right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shira. Okay, so I was hoping we could start off with super simple stuff and then kind of work our way into more complex stuff. And this, I realize you probably answer this 400 times a week, Shira, but what is cloud security?
Excellent question to start with. The answer is quite broad. If you had asked me this question a couple of years ago, it would have been much simpler. But today, when talking about cloud security, we're actually talking about a bunch of different things. For some people, cloud security, when you tell them cloud security, they actually think about the security of their SaaS applications. So their Slack, their Google Drive, their Dropbox, Teams, all of the applications that are connected to our work environment and that should be secured and least privileged. So this is, one aspect of cloud security. Another aspect of cloud security is how are you treating the infrastructure that you're using? So that could be your S3 bucket or your Azure blob. I don't know what's the equivalent in Oracle Cloud. I hope they have an equivalent to that. I'm not 100% sure, but whatever it is that you're using in Oracle. So that's another aspect of cloud security. And even, I mean, since you're probably running an application on the cloud infrastructure, then you're probably using APIs. How are they configured? The APIs are in a way are third parties, the third party components. So this is also part of cloud security, the supply chain. So again, when talking about cloud security, we're talking about so many things. I think that in our conversation today, we will focus on the infrastructure itself that you're using with the public cloud providers. And when we're going to talk about application security, we will be talking about the application that is running on that infrastructure and not on your SaaS products that are in your organization.
Excellent. Thank you. So I just got a message in the Q&A section that the chat is closed to attendees, and that's why no one answered where they are. So we have a bunch of question and answer where basically someone's like, I'm from North Carolina, United States. Someone else is also from the United States in Fort Lauderdale. And so I'm sorry to everyone that put all the places that they live in the chat and or in the Q&A because the chat is closed. Yeah, so that was not our intention at all. So just put everything in the Q&A feature, and sorry that the chat is closed. Thank you to the anonymous person that told me that, because I was like, oh, I'll message everyone in the chat. Oh, no one can see it.
No worries. I got the Q&A open now on my screen as well. So if anyone asks a question, we're going to see that live and answer at some point.
Okay, perfect. So the next question I had, which is for myself, is what is AppSec? And so it stands for application security, and it's securing software. It's basically all the stuff that you do to try to make sure the software that your company is creating is safe and secure from malicious actors, from accidentally malicious actors, including people that just make mistakes and copy the wrong thing into the wrong input. And so cloud security and AppSec, they overlap. What would you say, like some of the places, because you already mentioned SaaS products. So as the AppSec person, I consider it my job to make sure like that the product itself that we've bought, like that is safe and secure. And then you make sure access to it is secure. What other types of places might we overlap? Like all the things you're saying, I'm like, oh yeah.
So I think another really interesting concept we should talk about is how modern applications are built in the cloud. If in the past, when you used on-prem technology, you had to build your own database and your own authentication and different things that, you know, even, I don't know if they had machine learning at the time, but even these kind of technologies, you had to build from scratch in your environment. And today, when you're building a cloud-based application, you can actually go to your AWS console or even use even open source products, basically. And you want to build some kind of application, and the first thing you want is for people to authenticate when they want to log in. You don't need to build an authentication component. You're using a pre-built authentication component, either built by the cloud provider or by someone else. But within, you know, a few clicks and a few lines of code, you have the authentication in place. The authentication is part of your application, but you did not write this component. Another developer in another company wrote that. And just like that, you can build applications that are built from other applications. So this is the very big and growing overlap that we're seeing between application security and cloud security, because now part of my application is another application I did not create, and maybe I cannot really vouch for its security.
It's true. It's so true. And so like another point I wanted to bring up was DevOps. So we used to do lots of places still do waterfall all the time. But as we move to the cloud, it makes way more sense to do DevOps, because the cloud's awesome for that. And because then you can do infrastructure as code in the cloud way easier than on-prem. And like on top of that, like a lot of companies are architecting their old apps. So it's a ton of APIs and then a GUI front end. And again, it's kind of easier to do in the cloud. But that's a lot of permissions to handle, like a zillion different little APIs.
It's different. It's just different. Still needs to be secured. It is still our responsibility. If we want people to use our application, at the end of the day, it's our responsibility and it's our reputation. If you get hacked because of a vulnerability in a component that you did not build, but is a part of your application, it is your stuff to handle. It is your customers' data. It is your reputation, and you need to handle this.
Yes, we're still responsible for it. And there is a Canadian governmental organization where they're like, oh, we're not responsible because the internet's a bad place. And it's like, nope. If I'm legally required to give you. Right? And I'm just like, they need to listen to Shira.
So you know what? Earlier this week, I had a conversation with a government representative from a country that actually encourages governmental organizations to use the commercial cloud. They're telling them, go and use it properly, but they know that in order to accelerate and to deliver, they should use the public commercial cloud. It comes with a price, but the upside is that you're able to give, this is a governmental organization, and they will be able to deliver better services to their customers, the citizens and the residents of that country.
I completely agree. So not to completely complain about Canada, because I'm sure this happens in other countries, but yeah, when I was in the public service, we had like this one big group called Shared Services Canada, and I even worked there for a while, and they're trying to kind of build like a governmental cloud, and it did not go as well. And I have to say, like when I switched to Microsoft and Azure, I was just like, this is such a pleasure, comparatively speaking. Like it just works. Do you know what I mean? And I was just like, I just want things to just work. Like I have so many other things to worry about. I can't have you say, sorry, I gave your server to someone else from another department because they yelled louder than you did. And I'm like, but that's my server. I paid for that. Okay, but back on track, Tanya. Okay, so security always talks about shifting left. That is a thing that us AppSec folks, and I am partially responsible for this, Shira. I have told many people we need to push left. We need to start security earlier in the SDLC.
Left like a boss. I remember that talk.
Yes. Yes. But what about apps that are already in the wild? What do we do about those?
Very often people are ignoring the applications in the wild. They're saying, okay, but from now on, I'll be an angel, but I cannot be responsible to things other people did. It's a tough one. But guys, listen, we always need to, take care of legacy applications. Legacy applications can be in the cloud as well. It is still our legacy to take care of. I know you're not going to rewrite the entire application and move everything to containers and handle it as a new application. Yeah, so this means we need to put some guardrails to our existing applications, to the ones that are already in use. I know that you are terrified about making modifications and changes to the existing security configuration because something might break and you will not know how to fix it. You will not know how to bring it back to life. Luckily, later today, I'm going to show you some easy ways you can take care of already running applications that will make sure your security posture is improving, but the application will not break. So you will be able to very quickly make improvements and you will be security heroes just like us.
Yes, awesome. I want to tell everyone, if you want to put questions in the chat, you can. You can't put them in the chat, in the Q&A. The Q&A works and the chat is disabled. So never mind that. But just so you know, you're allowed to put more questions in there because we had 3 right at the very beginning and we answered those. And so if you want to put more in, you definitely can. I, of course, just want to skip to the demo, but I have more questions first. I'm like trying hard to be patient because I want to see the updates I have not seen for a while in Solvo because I haven't seen it in months. Okay, so the next question was how do we build security in from the start? And so I talk about this constantly. And Shira, I don't know if you want to answer this one too, or if you want to answer the next one, but if we want to make sure we're building secure software, we want to follow a secure system development lifecycle. And so by that, I mean, as we do, so if we're doing a waterfall, if we're doing agile, so a bunch of little circles, or if we're doing DevOps, so the eternity symbol, we need to have security activities in there. That's the key. So like each big thing that we do, we need to have security. So let's say we're doing requirements phase and we're figuring out what the heck are we building here? There should be some security requirements. Or when we're designing out the whole thing and we're talking about how to build and architect this product, we want to do, in my opinion, threat modeling, which can be just, it doesn't have to be a formal 3-week engagement like some consultants that sell those engagements will tell you. It can just be a 1-hour discussion between two nerdy female friends who are like, what could go wrong here? And what are we going to do about it to make sure that doesn't happen? Like how likely is this? Oh, that seems kind of likely. We'd better mitigate this problem. And so if you do something to one security activity or more, if you really, really want to make me happy, but basically like as you go through the system development lifecycle, if you do security steps, you will create a much more safe product. And yeah, so Shira and I both are like OWASP enthusiasts, so I have a feeling that she agrees. Did you want to add something or did you want to go for another question?
So I agree with everything that you said. Sometimes, we're not all of us are building startups from scratch and have the liberty to put security procedures in the right places before we need to fix someone else's code or the legacy that somebody created 6 months ago. And I also know that some of you who are starting or ramping up your software engineering careers, you did not learn about secure development. So it's funny that we come here and ask you to bake security into your work when you did not get proper training about it. So I think that you can either ask a more experienced developer, how do they bake security into their processes? When they do a code review, what are they looking for? How should I ask myself the right questions to look for those pitfalls? What are those pitfalls? What should I be looking at? Sometimes you don't even know what is the crown jewel for your organization. Some databases are not, they're not PII, they're not sensitive data. It would be embarrassing if they get leaked, but no real damage is going to happen. So how can we find the crown jewels of our organization? What is the right way to protect it? Is it a password? Is it encryption? Is it something else? We need to understand those things and then to think about how to, again, as Tanya said, bake them into the processes, put the right guardrails, put the right gates. It takes experience, and we should always try to talk to our colleagues, also to encourage them to have a conversation about it, but also to learn from their experience.
Yes. So I have sort of like a different question kind of off. So like we keep talking about like the DevOps folks and the security folks and the developers, but what about CISOs? Do CISOs have different needs than the rest of us? Because I feel like it's probably different.
So I talk to CISOs every day, all day. And I hear different answers from different CISOs. I think it really depends, first of all, on their approach. Some of them are very business oriented. Some of them are very, very technical. It also depends on the size of the organization. Sometimes the CISO is the only security person in a 100 employee organization. And sometimes it's a CISO of 100,000 employees organization, and that is going to look completely different. Something that I often hear from CISOs is, I want dashboards. And then you go and build those dashboards. But when I show the dashboard to a security engineer, to a DevSecOps engineer, they look at the dashboard and they go like, I can't do anything with it. Okay, so you're showing me a trend, but it's not telling me what should I do when I come to the office tomorrow morning. It's not actionable. It's not useful. It's really pretty to put on a screen, but basically I'm not going to take a second look at it. So we're seeing, different requirements or different needs from different people. And I'm sure you see the other side of it.
Yeah, yeah. So Shira and I were talking about this before we pressed the go live button. And so like she's building this giant, huge product, right? And CISOs are the ones that generally buy it, or the cloud security person buys it. But I've always been like the AppSec person that's like running around like looking at the dashboards. And so when I was a software developer, I remember multiple times where I would act as my boss. And then when I switched to security and doing AppSec and pen testing, I'd have to act as my boss. So my boss would go on vacation and it's like, okay, so which one of these techie nerds am I going to trust with not burning down the building while I'm away? And so like, Tanya, I guess she'll be fine. And then I remember, so the first time it happened was when I was still a dev. And then it happened a bunch of times throughout my career where, so I go to the big management meeting with like CISOs and the CIO and all those people. And I'm supposed to present this paper report that my boss has made. And I'd go through the projects and they'd be like, oh, and this one's green. I'm like, that's not green, that's red. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, that's red. No, this project's off the rails. Like I've been asking to have it canceled for weeks. And they're, excuse me? Last week it was green. The week before it was green. You're telling me it's failing now? I'm like, yeah. So I like crossed out a bunch of, my boss was very angry when he got home because I told the truth about everything. And so I remember like a few weeks later, I got dragged into that meeting again when my boss was back and he's like, why is this project red? It has been green for weeks. I'm like, oh no, it's been red for weeks. And like, it failed today. Like it's done. We're done. It was a Jira project. So we had this executive, I'm not going to talk about this forever, but we had this executive that was like in love with Jira. And I really like the Jira product. It kicks total butt. It's an awesome bug tracker. It's great for like having your agile user stories. And there's so many amazing things, but he made us customize it into a custom application. And he made 5 projects to customize 5. And I was like, what are you doing, dummy? The first time there's a major update to Jira, all those will be broken. He's like, no, it's fine. I did it at my last org. I'm like, your last org where you only worked a year and a half? So you never had to maintain everything? And so, yeah, so basically all the projects failed immediately because there's a new version of Jira. I'm like, oh, is your plan to never update ever? Because that's not a plan. That's dumb, right? And so, oh, it's such a disaster. That guy was really angry with me. And then again, when I was a security person, like they'd be like, oh, like, where's this at? I'm like, I haven't even met the client yet. I haven't even begun my pen test. Like, why are you saying it's half done? Are you kidding? Like, we have that scheduled for months from now. And just like, I looked at this and I was like, is this a joke? Like, did you give this to a kindergartner and they moved all the things, like all the statuses are wrong? I'm like, what about these 5 projects that my team's been working on that aren't on here? And my boss got back and he's like, you're never acting again. I'm like, you think that that's a punishment? Haha, I don't like your job. But I'm sorry, I'm so off topic. But this is why they need dashboards, because it tells the truth.
Yeah. So
right?
The dashboards should be the single source of truth, but they should also reflect what you care about. So for the CISO or for Tanya, who replaces the CISO, it should show the truth regarding our ongoing projects and some high-level questions like our status over time, our like critical compliance violations, and stuff that the CISO should probably step in and address. But for the DevSecOps engineer, they look at really, much smaller pieces. They would need to know that the developer spinned up an S3 bucket that has internet access, and that is, breaking our compliance, maybe. They should know about those little things that should be fixed immediately. The CISO might not care about each and every one, but the security engineer who needs to handle these issues should become aware of it immediately. So this is why we have 2 different personas with 2 different needs. And sometimes, especially, for us as a product company, it is always a question, because when we build a product, when we build a dashboard, we ask ourselves, who is going to use it and what are they going to do with it exactly? And you try to make everyone happy. You will see the product in a few minutes and you will tell me if we made you happy.
Awesome. So what types of users can we have? Are there just the two, like you're an engineer or you're a CISO? Are there like a few different ways you could look at stuff?
I think that in a very high level, these are the two main users, even though I'm seeing more and more organizations that are, being brave or being, futuristic, and are actually letting the developers handle the Solvo products. Yeah, they're saying, listen, you guys, you built this application, you know what the code is doing. You should own infrastructure security. At least when we're talking about the components that you built, you need to know what is your container doing, why is it doing that, and then grant it with the right permissions. And I really appreciate this approach. I think that this approach shows maturity. It gives the responsibility to the developers, but it also, when you choose to use Solvo or basically any other product, you're telling the developers, I believe in you, and I'm handing you with the right tool to be the guardian of the cloud. And we like to say that, security is everyone's job. It's true, yes. But it's also a cliche because it's everyone's job, but the CISO will be the first one to get kicked out in case of a big, incident. And we don't want for that to happen. So developers is another persona that is into cloud security. I think that another persona that we're seeing is GRC compliance engineers. If in the past, I think that we're seeing compliance folks moving away from, not away, but adding to the, pen testing and the network security. They're also adding identity and access management, not only for SaaS applications, also for the cloud infrastructure. So cloud security products should address all of those personas. You mentioned the CISO and the security engineer, and I'm adding the developer and the compliance engineers.
Oh, this is good. Okay, so now that we're technically half past the hour, can I just have a demo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see what I prepared for you today.
Okay.
So we have.
Do you have the power to share the screen? Because I just realized, like, I'm not. You do? Okay, you have superpowers. This is good. And as a reminder, people can ask questions in the chat because I find the most questions happen during the demo.
All right. So we're in the Solvo console. We talked about dashboards. So here are just a couple of things we made for our users. The first card that we're going to look at in the dashboard is the findings card, where we're going to see what kind of security issues I have in this account right now. Luckily, I have 0 critical findings. Yay, Solvo security team. But I do have a bunch of high, some medium, and some low severity findings. So this is a good place for us to understand where we stand. Same goes for compliance. We want to understand that we're compliant for some specific frameworks. I will show you what that looks like in a moment, but at least in the dashboard, we have an overall idea, and the CISO can see for themselves that we're in the, the green zone. We don't have, or we do have some critical issues. If we do, then we need to pick up the phone, call the security team, and ask them what's going on. Something really important.
I have questions.
Yes, please, Tanya.
Can I ask questions?
Yes.
For the compliance rules, do you get to pick those rules? Like, are you allowed to say we want to be compliant with this or that?
So you can definitely pick the rules. You can also build your own.
Ooh.
Yeah, we are supporting.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to show it, but just as a spoiler, we are using and we're supporting the Open Policy Agent, which is a nice project. I know that many organizations today are maintaining their compliance rules using that framework, and we love that.
Yeah.
I don't want you to work twice on the same project. So once you build the rules that you want to be compliant to, you can just export them to Solvo, or again, use the ones that we build, or build your own in our builder. So you can do that any way you want. I will show you what that looks like in a couple of moments.
Cool.
Another thing that Tanya, you and I discussed earlier is supply chain.
Cool.
When you build a cloud application, let's say you need to send text messages and you decided to use Twilio. This is a third party that is connected to your cloud infrastructure. Maybe you built, I don't know, a Lambda function that is triggered, that is sending a text message using Twilio. If Twilio gets hacked, you would want to immediately disconnect them from your cloud account, or at the very least, make sure they have very, very limited access to your cloud account. But sometimes people don't know what third parties have access into their cloud account. And this is why we have this little card for supply chain visibility. Here you have the list of all the third parties that are connected to your cloud account and when was the last time they were in use. And if you have not been using a product for a long time, I'm sorry, but you might be paying money for a product you're not using. So it's also a great opportunity to disconnect that product. But also just for you to be aware, in case you need, you can immediately go see to which products you have access to and disable or remove or reduce the access immediately and not go, start begging for the DevOps team to check that out. And the last thing I will show you in the dashboard is the data resources insights. This is very often the biggest concern for security engineers and CISOs, because they know that, the biggest fines they will get will be because of data leakage. We have a lot of privacy regulations worldwide. In Europe, you have the GDPR. In California, the CPRA. Each state has its own, adaptation to the privacy regulation. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure you're treating your data resources with the right, measurements. So
we need to protect them.
Yeah, in this little dashboard, you will know if you're out of compliance, and compliance is whatever you decide is. Compliance could be encryption, it could be internet access, it could be something else, it could be the Solvo, best practices if you like. Usually it's good enough for data security. So in this little, card, you'll be able to see what is your compliance posture or data security posture for the data resources in your account. And in this case, I have a critical finding regarding an S3 bucket. So this might be something I want to check out in the compliance page, which we will take a look at in a moment. We talked today about where application security meets cloud security. So I want to show you something that is very, very useful for DevOps engineers, for application engineers, when they want to understand how is the application using the cloud infrastructure. So I went to our infrastructure page, our IAM magnifier page, which is our visualization tool. I just picked the demo account, and I'm going to run a query. I will start with a very, very simple query. I will look at buckets with public access. And in this account, right now, I have 5 buckets with public access. But 2 of them have those green lines. And that actually means that based on the logic of the application, you actually need public access. So it is well configured. It's okay. You have reasons. Sometimes you have a web page that needs to load the images, and the images are stored in a bucket. So that's okay.
Yeah.
That could happen. So Solvo analyzes the behavior of the application and tells you that these 2 buckets are actually well configured. But you have other 3 buckets that are misconfigured. They have internet access and they do not need it. So for you as a security engineer, what you would like to do right away is to clean up the red connections. You would go to the S3 bucket page in your AWS console and remove the internet access right away. Now, I don't expect you to log into the Solvo console and every day run this query all by yourself. You can actually save this query in the Save Query button and ask us to notify you of Slack or over Teams or over your favorite platform if there is a new permission, if there is a bucket with new access to the internet, so that you will immediately take care of it and not, next year's audit. So this is really, really useful. But
that's so cool. But
I want to give you a more complex example, because the S3 bucket example is almost trivial, right? Everyone is looking at it. Now, I don't know if you ever heard about an action or a permission called pass role. So in the pass role permission, an identity, could be a user, could be someone else, can pass their role to a different entity. So for example, let's say I want to take a day off. I will pass Tanya the role of being the Solvo CEO. So for that day, you will be able to do anything you want, anything the CEO can do. Now, you might be a responsible person and, you'll just make sure everyone's doing their job, or you decide to, take all the employees to Disneyland, right? So obviously, you don't want to pass a role to everyone. You want to make sure that only specific entities can pass a role. What kind of role do they have? I don't want them to pass the admin permissions. If they need to pass a role, it should be something very, very specific. Now, geez, I don't know how to look for all the pass role permissions in my account. This is why by running the who can pass role query in the IAM magnifier, we're seeing this graph that shows us all the identities that can pass a role to one another. If I zoom in, we're going to see different kind of entities, a Lambda function, another cross-account role, a user, an ECS task, different identities that can run this action. But, this graph is a little busy. It's not the busiest I've seen, but, I get confused. So I can use the filters and maybe look just at the right red connections where I have permissions I do not need. And this would make more sense. And then I will have an easier conversation with the DevOps team and I will tell them, guys, you do not need these permissions. Let's remove them because they are risky in our account. So this is how we're going to have an easier conversation with them. Now, let's say you actually had a creative idea about a query, about a risky action, or about a resource you extra care about, and you want to make sure that it is well protected. So you can actually run this query all by yourself. You can just go to the query builder and build your own custom query about either a resource or an action or both. So let's say you wanted to run a query about your sensitive S3 bucket. So in this case, I will just, for the sake of our example, I will go to one of my S3 buckets, but I could have, used any kind of other resource, and you can see the graph looking really crazy. So let's use the filters. For example, I just want to take a look at the public access. So as you can see, the bucket that I was asking a question about has public access, and we can see the path from the internet all the way into the bucket. We can see which entities have these permissions. And when we were talking about application security meeting infrastructure security, this is exactly what we're talking about, because we can see the kind of permissions that are granted in this account right now, but we can also see which entities are using their permissions and which ones are not using it. If they're not using it, we can reduce the permissions and reduce the attack surface and improve our security posture. So this is why, getting some kind of visibility with Solvo or with any other product is going to help the security team and the R&D team or the DevOps team have a more fruitful conversation. If both of us or the three of us can sit together, look at a graph, and we will not argue about the truth. Here we can see the permissions and the application behavior in one place. So
Yeah.
as a developer, you will not be able to come and say, but I need this permission, because I'm showing you, Tanya, your application is not using this permission. So help us to help you.
Oh, this is amazing. And so some of them are red and some of them are not red. How does Solvo know? How's it know?
So Solvo uses several data resources to determine in the most accurate way what is your application doing and what resources is it using. So some information comes from a log called CloudTrail for the AWS users. It's a log that is provided by the cloud provider. AWS created it. And it is great. It is giving us a lot of information, but not enough information. Because it really depends on the developers of AWS and how they decided to describe their API activity. They did not create very good logs for every service. And for some services, you have partial logs that will not give us the complete picture. So it's like, it's okay. It's not great. This is why we built another sensor that is a Solvo component that is doing runtime analysis for the application. And that is going to give us the information that is missing in order to build a complete picture of the application behavior. And the next thing I'm going to show you is how Solvo builds the remediation for these missing behaviors. Because now you see everything that is red. And you're telling me, well, you know what? I want to reduce and remove everything that is red, but I really don't know where to start. And it's okay. Know that it's difficult and we're here to help. So let me show you how we do this kind of magic and how we help you remediate security issues. I'm going to go to my Lambda function page. I have some serverless applications here. And I will take a look at one of the Lambdas that I have in this account. So I went to the Lambda page, it's coming up. And here we have the graph that we saw before, but now it's for the specific Lambda that I wanted to take a look at. As you can see, it has some orange and some red lines. The red, as we said before, we can completely remove it, but everything that is orange, it means that we're partially using this permission, but it's still a little too broad. So for example, I have here I'm seeing the S3 logo. So I assume we're using S3, but we're probably not using all the S3 buckets in this account. We need to reduce the permission. If I click this node, we're going to see the specific actions and resources it grants access to. Up until now, I just told you that this Lambda function is misconfigured. It has some problems. We can also see the Solvo analysis here showing us a bunch of red bars. Red is not good. But let's go to the remediation, the Get Policy Suggestion button. I just clicked it. Here on the right side, the left side, we see the existing security policy. As you can see, it's a long JSON of services and actions the Lambda is allowed to do and it does not need to do. But on the right side of the screen, we have the policy generated by Solvo, which is list privileged. It means it only allows the Lambda to do what it needs to do in order to be functional. Now I will filter here so that the screen is less busy. So before we had wide access to S3 buckets, when in fact, the only access we needed was to delete, get, and put actions with one specific resource and even a specific partition within that resource. So instead of you going to the developer, telling them, dude, you built a vulnerable serverless application, can you fix it? You're telling them, my friend, I have created or I have delivered the fix for you. Please enforce it. And they're not going to say, Tanya, I don't have time for this, because you're going to tell them, but I built a CLI command for you. It's so easy, just run it. Oh, you guys are using Terraform? Well, here's the Terraform template. Let's use it. So they really have no excuse not to cooperate with you on this.
No, this is fantastic. Oh
Now
my
we're
gosh, is
almost
this?
running out of time. Yeah, sorry, you have a question?
Oh, oh no, I was wondering if this demo is this darn vulnerable serverless app.
Yes, this is the OS
Awesome.
project, and I invite everyone to play around with it. When Talman Ahmed built it, he was building it from the application security standpoint, but it is also very, very useful to learn how to, leverage this project for infrastructure security. So I invite everyone to play around with it.
Awesome.
It's from the OS website. Go and look for it. Maybe the last thing I'm going to show you today is the compliance module. We started talking about it before, and we mentioned the open policy agent that is running in the backend. And many organizations need to be compliant to many different frameworks. And I know it's a lot of work. So we created some things for you to make your life a little easier. One of the things we did was pre-built some of these frameworks into Solvo. So when you come in and want to, test your environment, all you have to do is check the boxes for the relevant frameworks that you care about. And that's it. We're going to run the analysis for you continuously. So you don't need to trigger a scan. Once you picked your framework or frameworks, we'll constantly run and check for any kind of violation. Also, as I said before, you can build your own rules. We're supporting OPA, so you can just take the Rego policy and put it in the Solvo console, and we will test your environment. Earlier this year, I gave a webinar about CPRA, the privacy regulation in California. So I built a few rules myself just to show our audience it is extremely easy. I filtered for CPRA, and I see a bunch of rules that I wrote here. Let's take a look at the newly created S3 buckets. I want to track, my environment and make sure I'm aware of any new S3 bucket. So I click the rule, and I can see here a list of violations, the newly created S3 buckets since the last time I logged in. Now, let's say you ran this kind of a query or check, but you're actually familiar with this bucket and it's fine. So you can check the box and exclude it. This is a safe bucket. So excluding findings is something you can do for any rule. For example, if you have a rule about a root user or users with high privileges, and these are actually legitimate users, and you want to make sure not to get notified about them, you can always do that. You can see the logic here, the Rego policy for this rule. So you can always take it, copy and paste it, and make some edits if you want, or again, build them from scratch. And you can trust Solvo to notify you about violations and show you the overall status of your accounts and the different frameworks that you want to be compliant to. Now, we might have a few minutes for questions. You want me to take a look at
that? So I looked in the questions. Can you see if there's any in there? I was looking earlier.
Yeah, so we actually have a question here. I'm beginning my career as a software developer, but I do want to get into application security and enhance my knowledge. How should I start?
Oh, nice. So I want to field this one. So We Hack Purple not only does these streams, but we have an entire online community. And inside of it, we have some free AppSec courses, a secure coding course, infrastructure security, like infrastructure as code security. Like we have a bunch of free things in there. We also have an online academy with what I'd like to say is very, very, very affordable pricing for even more courses. We're actually just started covering OSINT, which is really cool because we have a new professor. We have like in-depth encryption, etc. So I would suggest considering joining the We Hack Purple community and kind of poking around, maybe attending more events like this, but AppSec specific ones, taking some of the courses, and also every Monday on Twitter and now on Mastodon, I run a program called Cyber Mentoring Monday. And so I use a hashtag that's just those words squished together, Cyber Mentoring Monday. And you can use it to try to find a mentor. And that's another thing that can really help is just having a person that says like, oh, ignore those people that are talking about this, like you can go here, or oh, let me introduce you to this person or that person. I found having a professional mentor really, really, really helpful. Shira, have you had mentors before, and how helpful were they?
Oh, they were extremely helpful and extremely important for my career. Some people don't know this, but they are or they were my mentors. And these were just really kind people who agreed to hop on a call with me, to take a cup of coffee with me, and to give me advice. And they told me, listen, if you ever need anything, reach out. And I tried not to be shy, and I tried to reach out when I had a question, when I needed advice. And I think that Twitter, and specifically Cyber Mentoring Monday, is a great place for you to find a mentor. In Twitter, you can find a lot of very, very friendly people who really want to help, who are going to give you 30 minutes of their day to answer questions. But the other side of it is that you have to treat their time very respectfully. So not showing up to a meeting, big no-no. There isn't such a thing. If you set up a meeting with someone, you have to be there. And if you need to change the time, that's fine. But not showing up to a meeting, absolutely not. Do your homework before the meeting. Check out who that person is. What is their background? What is it exactly that you want to ask them? You need to come with very specific questions. And also know that it takes a lot of work from you. Don't come and tell them, this is my CV, can you improve it? Like they might give you an advice, like, you need to write your resume in a more a quantitative way and describe the impact in the organization. They're not going to rewrite it for you. You will have to rewrite it yourself. So be prepared to work.
I have a question for you. If someone wants to start in cloud security, how do they get started?
Excellent question. So I think that just like we hack purple, there are a lot of free online tutorial and courses. There are some people in the AWS community builders community that are creating free tutorials and articles. It's really, really easy to start. AWS has some free tiers of their infrastructure, so you can spin up some instances and other resources and just see how they're configured together and build some small demo applications. AWS has their own tutorials that you can play with. And if you want to learn about cloud security, then you can start a Solvo free trial and connect it with that free AWS account that you're using and get those graphs that I showed you before and better understand how your application is behaving and how to improve its security posture.
Nice. This is fantastic. I appreciate that. I was like trying to think of all the different places where people could learn cloud security, and there are, oh my gosh, you're a podcast, there's communities, there's all sorts of places. This is great. I also the damn vulnerable serverless app, the damn vulnerable web app, the damn vulnerable API, all the web goat, API goat, iOS goat, etc. All of those OWASP projects and other open source projects where it's intentionally vulnerable. If you get the free version of Solvo and then point it at that, I feel like you might have a really fun time.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like watching it like light up.
100%. And
Oh, this
as
is
you said,
wonderful.
we do offer free trials, so don't be shy. Go and start playing around with it.
Awesome. So I'm wondering if there are any resources besides the free trial that you want to share. Like, is there a blog or anything that you write that you might want to share?
Yes. So I write a blog. I publish nice, I hope they're nice, articles in the Solvo blog. Whenever there is a new attack vector or a misuse of the cloud that could impact security, I try to write about it. The last piece I wrote was about SCPs, the security policies in AWS. The other week, Zoom, our most popular, application, I guess, had a downtime because somebody misconfigured a security policy. So that teaches us that security misconfigurations could cause outages and other business disruptive events.
This is so true. Is there, okay, so one last question. I know we're coming up on time. Is there a way people could follow you? So like they should read your blog, but like, do you have social media or anything like that?
Yeah, please follow me on Twitter. It's Shambanit. And I'm also available on LinkedIn. Shira Shamban is the name. Please be my friends on LinkedIn. You can also join the Solvo newsletter.
Oh, nice.
And the We Hack Purple newsletter, which is highly recommended. I'm sure Tanya is going to write about this event or refer to this recording.
Yes,
So it's a good place to check out everything that we discussed. And yeah, I hope to see you guys there.
Awesome. And anyone that's watching that happens to be in Vancouver, the last weekend in April, Shira's going to be there. So check out her workshop with AWS. And then also her, is it workshop or talk for Vancouver B-Sides?
For B-Sides Vancouver, we have a talk and a really cool surprise for the end of the talk. So you need to come if you want to learn more.
Awesome. I love it. This is great. Thank you so much for being on a We Hack Purple stream with me, Shira. It's so lovely to see you again.
Same here. Looking forward to seeing you in 3D.
I know, me too. Thank you, everyone who came. We really appreciate you. Thank you for being a part of We Hack Purple, and we will see you next time. And with that, I do not have the superpowers to end this. So for my administrator of this thing, let's all wave goodbye, and then we can end our stream. See you next time, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.